began as a class project of mine in college. I was going to college for creative studies for industrial design, and I designed the coat in class, and that was really around designing to fill a need in the community. And it started off while I was doing research in a shelter called NSO, Neighborhood Service Organization. I was working in their Toonami Center, it's a warming center, at the edge of Midtown, edge of the Cass Corridor. And I was spending time 3 days a week, every week for 5 months working, spending time there at 8 p.m. and getting to know people that had been displaced and on the streets for years. And really the coat kind of came out of that experience and came out of spending time with those individuals. So I designed it really with them and not really just for them, but they were a huge part of the design process. And it was about a couple things. It was about giving somebody the pride and dignity and respect that they deserve, at the same time as also giving them something that can address a purely physical need of not being able to get into a shelter at night. Because at the time there were 20,000 people that were homeless and only about 3 or 4 active shelters. And so that meant tens of thousands of people were either outside living on the streets or in abandoned buildings and risking their life to do so. And so what do you offer somebody to prevent them from losing fingers or toes or limbs to frostbite if they can't get into a shelter in the worst weather? So that's where the coat, the physical part of the coat came out. And then why we're Empowerment Plan and not the coat project comes from something much different. It comes from the emotional side of it and seeing how people are treated in shelters and watching adults get treated like children and seeing somebody create a home out of a playground 20 feet away from the shelter. 2 people were living inside of this play structure and it ended up getting torn down and burnt down in a turf war. And the 2 people survived that incident only to pass away a few months later, just from having been out in the elements for so long. And I remember taking prototype number 20-something through the shelter and leaving one day, and a woman stopped me and started full on screaming at me that I had seen her many nights before. And she's like, "Look, coat doesn't matter. I don't need a coat, I need a job." And she was entirely correct. So on its own, the coat is a Band-Aid for a systemic issue. And so it really has the impact is hiring people that were needed in the first place. And so that's where the Empowerment Plan shifted from just being about this jacket and about this design project into something much bigger, which is about kind of going upstream and looking at what is happening in the cycle of homelessness and poverty. It's tough. It's very hard to get out of that cycle of what you're used to, what you're comfortable with, what you've grown up with. It's so hard to do that on your own. It's actually nearly impossible to break that cycle on your own. And I was lucky enough because of my grandparents and having external forces being able to intervene a little bit, that I was able to see that life could be different, that life didn't have to be what I had grown up in. I think it's mentorship, but it's also a support network that most of the world that does pretty well takes for granted. I think you think that like, oh, I got out of a bad situation on my own, but really you have a lot of people around you that can help you, and most of the people that we serve don't have that luxury of having a support network. And it is very hard to leave that space and leave that shelter and leave everybody you've known, potentially your entire life if you've grown up in that shelter, and your parents grew up in that shelter before you. Breaking away from that is leaving behind everybody you've ever known and leaving behind everything else that you've ever experienced. You're leaving behind your whole community, and that's why it's actually one of the top reasons people stay in poverty is being afraid to alienate friends and family.
A lot of women who don't have their GED, they have GED classes, financial literacy. We do meditation, just getting that time to relax, and we used to have yoga, so just stretching and just time to do team bonding. We have professional development, so it can help build skills for when we decide to move on from here. We all have similar backgrounds, so we were all either in some type of shelters. A lot of us here are single women with children. Some of us are from battered or abusive relationships, but for the majority of the part, everybody's kind of come from similar backgrounds.
The coat comes down to about your knees. It's one size fits most, because most people wear a lot of layers on the street and do not want to take anything off to put anything new on. So it is, materials are composed of material like Patagonia, Carhartt, Polar Tech. We partner with quite a few different companies, Refrigiware, that do garments for cold storage, but we're able to get all these amazing different colors, but heavy duty material that is water resistant, very durable, especially if you think of a Carhartt material, the Carhartt coat. We've seen people wearing our coats for years. This is not just like a one season garment, which is great. And then insulation, either we use General Motors insulation, which is really fun. We get to use recycled door paneling or plastic bottles. And our coat goes below zero, so the biggest thing is that it's water resistant, it's portable, so it can roll up into an over-the-shoulder bag when not in use. And there is what we call a foot bag, what looks like a giant pocket, and that is the sleeping bag component that folds out from the bottom that you can slide your feet in and then seal up completely. So especially a lot of people use it if they're sitting outside, or if they're like waiting to get into a shelter and they cannot. They use that to prevent, frostbite, things like that. But really, when we're looking at how much we've grown, our first year of operation, we did only a few hundred coats. We were, right before Pony Ride, we were in an old utility closet at another nonprofit, and we had 3 people that worked for Empowerment Plan. And then now, we're in this 21,000 square foot facility. We've done approximately 35,000 units since we began, and then we also have about 60 individuals total on the team. So we've grown quite a bit. People have this idea in their head of what homelessness is. And if you ask and you poll probably hundreds of people, they all have a pretty close image of what that looks like. And really homelessness is not a defining characteristic. It doesn't tell you anything about the person other than they're displaced. It doesn't tell you anything else. And I think that changing the way that people see poverty and homelessness as not a permanent state of being, not something that defines someone for their entire life, but as something that they can move through and move beyond. I think that's really important, that it can be a mother that has a PhD that ends up in a shelter because they're escaping domestic violence. It can be all sorts of people, and that frankly, none of us are as far away from it as we'd like to think we are.
I've been at the Empowerment Plan for 4 years.
How'd you hear about it?
I was currently at Cox Homeless Shelter for about 3 months when the Empowerment Plan came in and did a job fair. I had moved states, so it was a fresh start for me, and coming here I wasn't expecting to be homeless. So just getting a job after having given birth to a baby was, all my blessings coming true. There's no judgment, because like I said, we've all been through similar experiences, so it's kind of comforting to know, hey, my neighbor, she knows what it's like to be homeless, and she we all here to get, accomplish one thing, and that's, work and provide for our family.